The slap landed before anyone could breathe. 1 second, Zara was standing at the altar in her white gown, bouquet trembling slightly in her hands, eyes locked on Victor's face. And the next, Adisa's palm connected with her cheek so hard the sound cracked through the entire church like a gunshot. Someone screamed. A flower girl burst into tears. The pastor stumbled back from his podium, and Victor, the man who had whispered, "You are the only woman I will ever love," into Zara's ear just 3 nights ago, stood frozen, his mouth open, his hands at his sides, doing absolutely nothing. Zara did not fall. She did not cry. She turned her face slowly back to the front, her cheek burning, her eyes dry and burning hotter, and she said it quietly enough that the first 3 rows could hear her. "This fight is not over." If you are new here, subscribe right now and turn on your notifications, because this story is going to shake you to your core and you do not want to miss a single second of what happens next. The silence in that church lasted exactly 4 seconds before it exploded. Women were on their feet. Men grabbed their wives. Nneka, Zara's mother, was already moving down the aisle, her wrapper nearly coming undone, her eyes fixed on Adisa like a woman who had decided that today she had nothing to lose. 3 of Zara's aunties held her back physically, their arms wrapped around her waist, their voices low and urgent in her ear. "Not here, not now. Think of Zara, think of the cameras." There were cameras everywhere. Adisa stood in the center of the aisle, her chest heaving, her lace blouse perfectly pressed, her gele sitting high and proud on her head, as though she had not just committed an act of war in the house of God. She looked at Zara with something that was almost satisfaction, a woman who had done exactly what she planned to do and was not the least bit sorry. Victor finally moved. He stepped toward his mother, not toward Zara, and placed his hand gently on Adisa's arm. "Mama," he said. "Mama, please." Zara watched him walk toward his mother. She watched his hand on Adisa's arm. She felt the exact moment something shifted inside her chest, not breaking, not yet, but tilting, like a building that has taken one hit too many and is deciding very slowly which direction to fall. She picked up her bouquet from where it had dropped on the altar floor, smoothed the front of her gown with both hands, and walked out of the church on her own 2 feet without being helped by anyone. That night, Victor came to her family's house. He sat in the parlor across from her with his elbows on his knees and his head bowed, and for a long time neither of them said anything. The ceiling fan turned slowly above them. A neighbor's generator hummed outside the window. Zara sat with her hands folded in her lap, still in her wedding dress because she had not been able to bring herself to take it off, as though removing it would make everything that happened real in a way she was not ready for. "I am sorry," Victor said. His voice was rough. "Zara, I am so sorry." "You stood there," she said. "I know. You watched her hit me and you stood there." I froze. I did not know what to do. "She is my mother and She is your mother," Zara repeated, and there was no anger in her voice, which was somehow worse than if there had been. "And I was going to be your wife, and you stood there." Victor reached across the space between them and took both her hands. His grip was desperate. His eyes were wet. "I love you," he said. "You know I love you. Whatever she did, whatever happened today, that does not change. I love you. I have loved you since the first day I saw you sitting in that coffee shop with your laptop and your terrible taste in music playing through your earphones." Despite everything, something flickered at the corner of Zara's mouth. Not quite a smile, the ghost of one. "My music taste is not terrible," she said quietly. "It is catastrophically terrible," he said, and his voice broke on the last word. He moved from his chair to kneel in front of her, his hand still holding hers, his forehead dropping until it rested on her knuckles. "Please do not leave me. Please. We will fix this. I will fix this. I swear to you, I will fix this." Zara looked down at the top of his head for a long time. She thought about the day he had driven 3 hours in the rain just to bring her pepper soup when she was sick. She thought about the way he always saved the last bite of food on his plate for her without thinking about it, just automatically, the way breathing is automatic. She thought about the night he had held her hand at her father's graveside and not said a single word because he understood that sometimes words are useless and presence is everything. She cupped his face in both her hands and tilted it up so he was looking at her. "I am not leaving," she said, "but I am not pretending today didn't happen either. Your mother declared war on me in front of God and 300 people, Victor, and I need you to understand that I intend to win." He pulled her down from the chair into his arms, holding her against his chest on the floor of her mother's parlor, his arms tight around her, like a man holding something he almost lost. She let him. She pressed her face into his neck and closed her eyes, and for a few minutes in his arms, the world was quiet. But Adisa had started something, and it was far from finished. Like this video and drop your country in the comments. Let us know where in the world you are watching this story unfold. 6 weeks after the wedding that never was, Zara sat on the edge of her bed at 6 a.m. staring at a pregnancy test. 2 lines. She sat there for a long time without moving, the test flat on her palm, the morning light coming soft and grey through the curtains. Her mind was not panicking. It was very, very still. The way a body goes still when something so enormous has happened that the brain needs a moment to decide what shape this is, whether it is a disaster or a miracle or both at once. She called Victor before she had fully decided which it was. He arrived in 20 minutes, still in the clothes he had clearly slept in, hair rumpled, eyes alert with fear. She opened the door and held up the test without saying anything. He stared at it, then he stared at her. Then something happened to his face that he had never seen before, a cracking open, a flooding, joy so total and unguarded that it made him look 10 years younger, like a boy who had just been given the one thing he asked for. "Zara," he said, just her name, like it was the only word that mattered. He crossed the threshold and pulled her into him, lifting her slightly off the ground, his face buried in her hair, and she felt him shaking, actually shaking with something that had no name except the feeling a person gets when they realize their life has just changed in the most irreversible, most beautiful way possible. "We are having a baby," he said against her hair. "Zara, we are having a baby." "Put me down," she said, but she was laughing. "Victor, put me down." He put her down but did not let go. He held her face in both hands and kissed her, long and slow and certain, the kind of kiss that is not about passion but about promise. When he pulled back, his eyes were still wet. "I am going to be better," he said quietly, seriously, looking straight at her. "I need you to know that. After what happened at the church, I am going to be better. I will not freeze again, I swear to you." She pressed her palm flat against his chest and felt his heart beat fast and real beneath her hand. "Then let's start right now," she said. His phone rang. He glanced at the screen. His face changed, not dramatically, just a small tightening around the eyes, a slight stiffening of the jaw. He showed her the screen. "Adisa." She stepped back and nodded once. "Answer him." He did. She watched his face while he listened. Watched the joy drain out of it degree by degree, replaced by that careful blankness he always wore when his mother was speaking. The expression of a man who has spent 30 years learning to make himself small enough to survive. When he hung up, Zara said nothing. She simply looked at him. He said, "She wants to come and see you. She says she wants to apologize." 3 days later, Adisa arrived at Zara's home unannounced, 2 hours before the time they had agreed. She came alone, no driver, no bag, just herself in a plain Ankara blouse and wrapper, looking almost humble, which was the most dangerous version of Adisa that existed. Zara let her in. She made tea she did not drink herself and sat across from the woman who had slapped her at her own wedding and waited. Adisa looked around the sitting room slowly, taking inventory the way she always did, measuring, calculating, filing things away. Then her eyes settled on Zara's midsection with a precision that made Zara's skin prickle. Adisa said, "Victor told me." "I know. How far along?" "Far enough." Adisa smiled. It did not reach her eyes. "You know, when I was pregnant with Victor, his father was not even in the country. I carried that pregnancy alone. I delivered alone. I raised that boy alone. Everything he is today, the education, the connections, the name, I built that. I built him." She set her teacup down carefully. "So, you will understand why it is difficult for me to simply hand him over to someone I do not know, someone whose background I am not certain of." Zara felt this shift in the room the way you feel weather changing. She put her own cup down. "Adisa," she said, "if you have come here to question whether this child is Victor's, I need you to say it plainly so we are both clear on what you are doing." Adisa's eyes flickered. "I said nothing of the sort. You implied it. You were implying it." Zara stood. "You slapped me at my wedding. You spent months spreading lies about me to Victor's family. And now you have come into my home 2 hours before the time we agreed, which tells me you are hoping to catch me unprepared, and you are sitting in my chair questioning my child's paternity." She walked to the front door and opened it. "Leave my home, Adisa. Come back when you are ready to be a grandmother. If that day never comes, then do not come back at all." Adisa rose slowly. She straightened her wrapper. She walked toward the door and paused just beside Zara, close enough that Zara could see the slight tremor at the corner of her mouth, the only evidence that anything Zara said had landed. "You think you have won something," Adisa said quietly. "I think," Zara said, equally quiet, "you should go before my mother gets here." Adisa left. Zara closed the door, leaned her back against it, and pressed both hands flat against her stomach. Her heart was hammering. The baby was the size of a grape, and already the center of a war it had nothing to do with. Victor called that evening. "How did it go?" "Your mother questioned the baby's paternity." Silence. "Victor?" "I will talk to her." "You keep saying that." "Zara, I am not angry," she said, and she meant it, which was the exhausting part. She was not angry. She was tired in a way that went deeper than sleep could fix. "I just need you to understand that I am building a wall around myself and this child, and I need to know which side of that wall you are on." He did not hesitate. "Yours," he said. "I am on your side, always." She wanted to believe him. She was trying. But 3 kilometers away, in a house full of framed photographs and secrets, Adisa was on the phone with someone, voice low, words careful, and whatever she was planning, it was not an apology, it was an enemy. It was Barrister Chike who changed everything. He was Chief Raymond Eze's younger brother, a quiet man, methodical, the kind of person who spent 40 years watching his family from a careful distance and documenting what he saw. He called Victor on a Tuesday morning and asked him to come alone. Victor told Zara where he was going. He had promised her no more silences, no more spaces she was not allowed into. He came back 3 hours later and sat in the same chair in her parlor where his mother had sat a week before, and the look on his face was one Zara had never seen, not grief exactly, not anger exactly, but something underneath both of them, a man who has just had the floor pulled out from under his entire life. "Tell me," Zara said. "My father had another family, a woman, a son. His name is Tobeno. He is 31 years old and he has been living in Port Harcourt his entire life, knowing exactly who his father was, waiting." Zara did not speak. She sat forward and gave him her full attention. "My father wrote a will before he died," Victor said. "A real will, witnessed and signed, dividing his estate, the properties, the accounts, everything, 3 ways, between my mother, between me and my siblings, and between Tobeno."
Victor's voice was very controlled. My mother found the will first. She has known about it for over 15 years. She buried it. She has been managing the entire estate as though she is the sole heir, collecting from properties that legally belong to Tobeno, making decisions that one never has alone to make. Victor, Zara said carefully. She told me my father died with nothing, he said. Every school fee she paid came from her own savings. She made me feel guilty my entire life for the sacrifices she made. His jaw was tight. There were no sacrifices, Zara. There was inheritance money she controlled by destroying evidence. Zara moved from her chair and sat beside him on the sofa. She took his hand. She did not tell him it would be all right, because she did not know if it would be. She just held his hand and let him feel whatever he needed to feel without rushing him through it. "What does Barrister Chike want to do?" she asked. "He has kept a copy of the will all these years. He wants to present it, legally, publicly." Victor looked at her. "My mother is organizing a Thanksgiving service at the church next Sunday, a big one. She invited everyone. It is supposed to be her way of restoring her image after the wedding. Chike says it is the right moment." Zara was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "She picked that church. She chose that stage. She built that stage." She squeezed his hand. "Let the truth use it." Victor looked at her for a long moment. Then he brought her hand to his mouth and pressed his lips against her knuckles, slowly, like punctuation. "How are you this calm?" he asked. "I am terrified," she said honestly, "but I have been terrified since the day she slapped me in front of 300 people, and I am still standing. Being terrified doesn't have to mean being quiet." He pulled her close and kissed her temple, her cheek, the corner of her jaw, each one deliberate, unhurried, as though he was learning her face by memory, storing it somewhere nothing could reach. "Whatever happens next," he said against her cheek, "you and this baby are the only thing I am certain of. You understand that?" She turned her face so her lips met his, and for a moment, the whole weight of everything, the lies, the will, the slap, the war, lifted, just for that moment, just long enough to remember what they were fighting for. Sunday arrived the way reckonings always do, quiet at first, ordinary, almost gentle. The church was full to capacity. Adisa sat at the front in deep purple lace, her gele immaculate, her hands folded in her lap like a queen receiving tribute. She had invited the press. She had invited family from 3 states. She had prepared a speech about resilience and God's faithfulness and the strength of a woman who had held her family together through the worst of times. She had not invited Tobeno. He came anyway.
Zara saw him walk in from the back, a tall young man with Chief Raymond Eze's exact jaw, his exact way of holding his shoulders, so recognizable it was almost violent. Beside him, Barrister Chike moved quietly, a leather folder tucked under one arm, his expression the careful neutral of a man who has waited 15 years for this specific Sunday. Adisa saw them from the front. Zara watched the moment the recognition hit her, a micro-expression, barely a flicker, quickly controlled, but Zara caught it. Adisa had known this moment would come eventually. She had simply believed she could hold it off forever by sheer force of will. The Thanksgiving service proceeded. Hymns were sung, prayers were prayed, testimonials were shared, and then, as the pastor invited final remarks before the benediction, Barrister Chike rose from the back pew and walked calmly to the front. "I apologize for the interruption," he said into the silence, "but what I have to say concerns this family and it concerns the truth, and I believe both God and Chief Raymond Eze would want it spoken in exactly this kind of place, before exactly this kind of audience." He opened the folder. He read the will clearly, slowly, without drama, because the facts themselves were dramatic enough.
He named Tobena by full name. He described the properties. He explained the legal implications of the suppression. He presented his documentation. A photographer's camera flash went off twice near the back. No one moved. Adisa sat very still. Her hands were still folded. Her face was controlled, but something behind her eyes had gone dark, not from shame, but from the specific devastation of a person who has just watched the lock they spent decades maintaining spring open in public with nothing left to do about it. Tobena stood at the front of the church and looked at his brother. Victor looked back. Neither of them spoke. There was too much to say for any of it to start here. Nneka reached over from her seat and gripped Zara's hand. Zara gripped back. Victor found Zara's eyes across the pew and held them. And Zara thought, this is not the ending. A woman who has been deceiving for 15 years does not become honest in a single Sunday. There are lawyers ahead of them. There are battles ahead of them. There is a mother who will not simply surrender what she spent decades controlling. There is a half-brother who has waited his whole life for a family to acknowledge him. There is a pregnancy and a wedding that still has not happened, and a relationship that has been tested in ways most people never face. But they are standing. They are standing on truth now, which is harder ground than lies, but holds the weight better. After the service, Victor found her outside under the shade of a neem tree, her hand resting on her still flat stomach, watching the crowd disperse in clusters of whisper and shock. He came and stood beside her without speaking. He put an arm around her shoulders. She leaned into him. "What do we do now?" he asked. She looked up at him. She said, "We go home. We call a good lawyer. We eat something because I am hungry, and this baby is apparently always hungry. And tomorrow we wake up and we do it all over again." He laughed, a real one, surprised out of him, and pressed a kiss to her forehead, then her nose, then her mouth, right there under the neem tree with half the congregation still watching. She kissed him back, fully, without apology, because she had been slapped at her altar and she had not fallen. She had been lied about and she had not broken. She had stood in front of a woman who wanted to erase her and she had refused to disappear. Whatever came next, she was ready. If this story moved you, hit that like button right now and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And drop your location in the comments below. Tell us where in the world you are watching from. We read every single one.